When it comes to using the Boss Katana, there are people that will use Tone Studio constantly and people that don't, and some don't even want to touch it. The first thing most users want to do is start dialing in tones or downloading presets, and that's what it's for. But do you always want to be tied down to a computer or a mobile device to dial in tones? No, and you can use the panel to do that. Unfortunately, you're at the mercy of the factory presets, and if you want to change those, you have no choice but to connect to a computer or mobile app. In this video, I'm going to show you essential settings in Tone Studio every Katana user should set up so you can make changes from the panel with presets of your own choosing, and then you don't even have to connect to the computer. That way, if you're ever caught without a way to D-pad it from the computer or mobile app, at least you have good options that suit your style to choose from on the fly. Now, if you've never updated your Katana's firmware or connected to Tone Studio, I have a video that can help you with that. I'll link the playlist at the end here. Now, I will say that if you have an Android phone or tablet, I highly encourage you to buy the $10 Librarian app and the OTG cable adapter because those come in very handy when you really need to D-pad it on the go. I say Android because iPhone gets a little more complicated and you have to spend a little more money in order to do it. Now, let's jump into Tone Studio. Today, I'm working with the Katana 50 Mark II. I've got a factory reset done and I have the panel channel up here selected. Now, as you can see, I have everything on the amp right across the board here, except for this stuff. Don't worry about that stuff. Everything across the board here is at noon. This is only within Tone Studio or only if you have the Katana Artist Mark II. Okay? Everything else here is physically on the panel. So, if you change these in Tone Studio like I am here, okay, and you click off it, and you click back on it, everything's going to reset to exactly how it is on the physical amp. Even if you make the changes and hit right, and right to the panel, power off, power back on, or click off, and it's going to go right back. It's always going to revert to the physical settings. Now, everything up here is what the 50 and the 100 and the 100 head have, and the EX. Now, everything over here, the artist is going to have. So, if you have the artist and you make changes there and you save it, same thing, it's always going to revert back to exactly what is on the panel. Now, everything down here is going to be able to save to the panel if you choose to write it. Same goes here for the 100 and the 50 and the 50EX. I hope you're following along here. First thing we're going to talk about is the chain. Now, the chain, the factory preset on the chain is 3-1, which is a pretty good one because if you want to put a boost, a mod, and an FX before the preamp, that's this part right here. I'm sorry, this part right here, the equalizer and effects and everything else on over. That's where you want to put it. So if you want to put a booster, a dirt pedal, compressor, or an equalizer before the preamp, that's a good one to choose. Personally, I would leave it a little more open and go with chain 2-1 because I normally won't put a EQ before the preamp when I'm using this. So everything that you're going to choose here within these settings is going to be your own personal preference to suit your style. So you got to figure out which one that you want to use. If you just want to put a dirt pedal in front of the amp and everything else after, chain 1. If you want to put a compressor before the booster, then 2-1 or any of these ones down here will work for you. I'm going to leave mine at 2-1 just in case I want to put a compressor there. Now, factory presets for effects. Everything you see here is what you're going to be limited to if you don't make these changes. So you'll be limited to the blues driver, the overdrive, and distortion. That's your blue, your red, and your yellow. Same thing with these mods, FX, delay, and reverb and delay. But let me tell you something. If you go in here, and let's say you change this to the metalcore, and you write it to the panel, metalcore has now become your green default. So what you want to do is you want to set it up to your preferences, to your style, each and every one of those. So what I'm going to do, I like the blues drive. I like the Tube Screamer, and I like the Governor DS. Those are going to be my go-to boosters. As far as the mods go, I am going to set a compressor. It's not going to give me the choice of which compressor right off the bat, but you can put a compressor there, maybe put a chorus there, and let's just say I want to put a graphic equalizer in there. So there's my graphic equalizer, my chorus, and my comp. Now, if you want to go into each one of those and save it, what you're going to have to do, let's experiment here a little bit. So let's go to the mod, all right? In here, the mod compressor is just a boss compressor. Let's say I want a light boss compressor. I'm going to write it to the panel. And then if I change it, there's my chorus, and there's my graphic equalizer. Now, the knob on the graphic equalizer, we'll talk about that in a second. So if I switch back to the compressor, it's going to be the light compressor. Now, if I switch to the chorus, let's make some changes on the chorus. Okay, let's turn down the mix. Let's turn down the levels. And then let's write it. Now, again, it is going to be physically what these knobs do on the panel that they're going to reset to. So even though I just wrote that, okay, the mod for the chorus, the knob controls the low rate. I'm pointing to it with my finger. It controls the low rate and the high rate. Okay, so if I turn those down, even if I write it at their 22 and 12, I write it, I click off. If I come back, that chorus, they're going to be right back where that knob is around 12 o'clock. Now the booster, the knob on the booster controls the drive. Now we can change that. I'm going to show you how when we get towards the end a little bit. So you can make those changes. Let's go look at the mod. Okay, let's go look at the let's go back to the compressor, and it's still on the light compressor. So that'll stay on the light compressor. So you can go in and you can choose each one and write it. Now, let's go to my graphic equalizer. The knob on the graphic equalizer is kind of funky. It only adjusts the level and your middle frequencies here. Okay, so check it out. If I got that, and it's gonna, you see what it's moving as I'm moving that knob. So even if you change all these, let's say we're going to put all these down, all the ones outside where it doesn't control them. Let's write it, panel it, comp, let's click off, click back on the panel. I know I'm kind of moving along. I hope you're really following along here. If I'm moving too fast, down here somewhere is that little settings gear. Click that, and playback speed, slow it down a little bit. I talk too fast sometimes and I move along too fast. I'm trying not to make this video too long. But let's go back over to our yellow, and those other settings stay the same, but these ones still. Now, we're going to change that one in a minute. But that shows you the gist of what you can do with the effects. Now, down here on delay, you can change whatever delay you want. But in delay, you've got digital, analog, tape echo. Change them to whatever you like. If you want a modulate in there, put a modulate in there. If you want the SDE 3000, that's all up to you. Over in Reverb, okay, this is where this gets a little more complicated, because up here you see delay 2 and reverb. This part of the reverb controls both of those. So if you want to set the green mode up here to reverb, and then the second one to delay, let's say delay, and then the third one to delay and reverb, you can do that. So if you want to set your reverb to plate reverb, your delay to, actually it'd be over on this side, to let's say tape echo, and then this is both of them. So you want the, let's say, analog and hall or spring. Write it. Those are your new settings. So that's going to be delay, that's going to be delay and reverb, and that's just going to be strictly reverb. If you want to go your delay, that's going to control delay 2. So as you can see, I turn the knob off, it turns it off. That controls the effect level. We want to go to yellow. It is not only going to affect that, affect the effects level, but over in reverb, as you can see, it's controlling that one too. Now contour, this is something as well as solo. These are settings that once you set them and hit right, they don't change. You cannot turn them on or off outside of Tone Studio or Katana Librarian. So once you set it, remember, it's there until the next time you connect to a computer or a mobile device, which is good because if you find a contour or a solo setting that you really like, you can set it and forget it. Same with global EQ. That's an important one. If you want to set an EQ over here, same thing. Once you set it, it's going to be in there until the next time you change it. Pedal effects you can turn on and off from the foot switch if you got the 100, and you'll have to do assigning on that one. Noise suppressor, again, turn on the noise suppressor. Find a setting. It might depend on which kind of guitar you're using. If you're using guitar with hot humbuckers and you're using a lot of gain, you want to set that noise suppressor a little higher. That way you're not getting feedback or you're not getting so much hum or grounding issues. So set that to how you need it. Turn it on. That's always helpful. EQ1 to EQ2 if you want to set a parametric EQ in there. If you want to set a graphic equalizer in there, amp in, amp out, those are up to you as well. But remember, once you set them there, they're going to be there unless you can change it in Tone Studio. The global EQ, on the other hand, if you have an artist, you can change that from the panel, but not the 50 or the 100 or EX. We're all talking Mark II here. So to set a global EQ, you have to go up to System and then go to Global EQ, and you can change the position as output, input, line out, or SP out. Okay, so if you want to do the tone shape of a parametric EQ, set it up in there and always have it on, which isn't a bad idea, as long as you don't go too overboard, because the parametric EQ can really open up your sound as well as a graphic equalizer, but the parametric EQ, you have a little more option. So if you can set a global EQ and leave it on there, that's going to change your tones drastically in the panel. You want to set your cabinet resonance, again, once you set it, that's it until you can connect with a mobile device or Tone Studio. I know I'm saying that a lot. I'm just trying to remind you, because if you set it on deep and all of a sudden you're trying to play something that you think should sound more vintage and it doesn't quite sound right, that's probably your issue. So I just leave it on vintage most of the time, and I turn the presence up to about 65, 67, somewhere in that range. Always works for me. That doesn't mean it'll necessarily work for you. Now, this is going to be kind of important if you have the 100 or the 100 head, or even the artist, because it's not a bad idea to turn the effects loop on. If you're out and about, you never know when you might need it. You just need to know whether you want to have it post-amp or post-reverb, series or parallel. This whole process may take a lot of experimenting and may take you a whole day to get all these settings down in the panel that you want and that you prefer. But once you get them down there, it'll be a lot more rewarding when you grab your amp and take it to play out somewhere or practice or whatever, and you can make those changes within the panel and be able to set them if you have to adjust to a room. Lastly, and this is an important one, this is a really good one. Actually, there's one more before it. Okay. If you have the 100 or the 50EX and you want to assign the buttons to the GFAC, GAFC? Did I just say GFAC? I don't know. It doesn't matter. Go into your system, go into GAFC. I can't do it right now because I'm hooked up to the 50, but you can change what each channel button does in the function mode. So in the function mode, you can change it, whether it's going to turn the solo on and off, pedal effects on and off, so on and forth. If you know how the GAFC EX or just the GAFC works now with the function mode. So you can assign what the buttons do in that besides just changing channels. Back over to assign. As I said before, this one is important. If we go over to assign, you can see this knobs button right here. And if you have an expression pedal, you can set what that expression pedal's function does. If you want to set it as a volume pedal or just foot volume, pedal effects, booster, whatever, this is where you set it. And then you have to go down here and set the parameters of everything. But the knobs is the most important to me because we're working off the panel. Now, if you go to booster, you can see the blues drive in the booster. This knob adjusts the effects level down and the drive up when you move it. And it does different things for different boosts. So if I go to the Governor DS, okay, let me switch this over here. There you go. There's the Governor DS. That just adjusts the drive. It adjusts the drive. And with the Tube Screamer, let's just hit that again. Tube Screamer, that adjusts the drive as well. So if you just want to use the Tube Screamer as a boost, you're going to want that all the way down. You're going to want to get your tone settings correctly. And once you get your tone settings correctly, save it, write it, and that'll save those in there. Just like I showed you with the other mods. Set those settings in there, write it. That'll save those default presets to the panel for you. So with the Tube Screamer, up and down. Now if I want to go to Assign and change that booster, if I want to change it to, the preset is drive. If I want to change it to tone or bottom or effects level or solo, I can do that as well. Or the direct mix. You can pretty much assign that knob to do almost whatever you want it to do. Let's say I only want to use the Tube Screamer as a booster, but I want to be able to adjust the effects level. So I'm going to set it like that. I'm going to go back over here, and I'm going to hit right. And now that knob is going to adjust effects level right here. So I can set that down there, and I can use this to just hit the effects level, and that's it. I hope you understand where I'm going with that. Same thing with the mod. Let's go over to the mod, and let's change the compressor. Okay, if you go over to Assign, and we go over to, let's see, it's the mod. It'll be down here. Compressor, the preset on the mod is going to be sustain and level. Now, if we go back over here, let's just see you can just change it to sustain, attack, tone, or level. So you can just change it to level and go back over here. And now your mod is only changing your level. And if you're cool with that, write it. So just remember, you got to write it. With everything down here and everything up here, it won't take effect unless you write it. As far as the little settings go, these settings will be fine. But the little settings across here may not stay. I don't know. I'm not 100% sure about that. But it's always a good idea to write it. All right. I almost forgot to show you what the graphic equalizer assign button does when you go to assign. So if you have your graphic equalizer here, you can go to assign and you go down to graphic equalizer. And you can actually assign it to each individual frequency. To only make the knob do that, can you do more than one? Or is it just one single? Because that kind of sucks, because the preset is those three middle ones and the level, but you can assign it to each individual frequency, which I wish they just set it so you could adjust mids, lows, and highs, or lows, mids, and highs, like that, as a group. Or different waves. That would have made more sense if they could have let you do it like that. But you can just do it like that. Let's set that at that one. Let's go back over to our effects and our mod. And now when we move that mod, all it does is adjust that 31 hertz, which is stupid and kind of weird. So let's go back over to that and find our graphic EQ. And this would probably be the more rational way to use it, is using that mod to adjust the level instead of any individual frequency. But you can leave it on preset, or you can do whatever the hell you want with it. So once again, in Assign, you can change whatever effects you set up there. You can change what the knobs do. And like I said, it's going to take a lot of experimenting. It's going to take a lot of time. But once you set everything up in Tone Studio for the panel and write it, everything from here on over here is going to be the way you want it. Everything else over here, okay, as far as knob settings go, once again, once you turn it off, once you switch out of it, it's going to switch back up to where they physically are on the panel. Now, I know I've moved along really quick, and this was probably very disorganized. I probably could have done it a lot better. but I hope you understand where I was going with this. And now that you have it all set up and written, you can unplug it from your computer and you can use it in your practice space or wherever you want, and you make those adjustments from the panel to suit your style and however you want to do it. But I do encourage you to learn Tone Studio. And if you really need an on-the-fly way to change it, that mobile app is fantastic. But I have a huge user's guide, a comprehensive user's guide on going through Tone Studio and the amp if you want to check that out. It's a lot to take in, but it's very useful as far as learning Tone Studio. And if you have the time, I highly encourage you to learn it. This amp, there's so much to this amp that can be used outside of just the amp as far as Tone Studio goes. Again, I know I was kind of all over the place on this, but I hope you could follow along and get a full understanding of it. I may have to redo it sometime, be a little more organized. But if you found this video helpful and you liked it, hit that like button for me, please. And if you want to stick around and learn more about the Katana and learn more about dialing in tones from Tone Studio, hit that subscribe button. I try to do one at least every week, but sometimes life gets a little busy. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.